Quando prosecco conto nostra ratio et operatio a te in principio per te cetto finiata per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Thank you, Decime, ora pro nobis. And here we are already at today's topic, the Holy Mass. What happens to Mass? Now first you have to know that the so-called Tridentine Mass, or the so-called Latin Mass, those are both confusing terms because there is no such thing as a Latin Mass in the way it is used nowadays, and there's no such thing as a Tridentine Mass. There is only the Mass rite of the Catholic Latin Church. You see, the Catholic Church consists of the Latin Rite, the Ambrosian Rite, the Rite of Braga, the Rite of the Mozarabic Visigothic Rite, the Sarum Rite, the Premonstratensian Rite, the Dominican Rite, and the Eastern Rites. And they all have different liturgies, even though those liturgies have one thing in common. They all express the idea of the real presence of the Lord on the altar, and they all express the idea of the propitiatory sacrifice. That means a sacrifice not just for praise and thanksgiving, but a sacrifice for the redemption of sin. And all of these rites go back to the Latin rite which we use, which was the original rite used by St. Peter in Rome. Not in every detail as we know it, but in many parts. Now the Roman canon, you have to understand the canon is the part of Mass between the Sanctus, Holy, 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 until Communion. The canon of Mass is something that goes back to the times of the Apostles. So it's not just 400 years old. It doesn't just go back to the Council of Trent. It goes back to the time of the Apostles. And when St. Gregory the Great, my patron saint, when he changed, he was Pope between 590 and 604. When he added the words diesque nostros into a pace disponos to the hanc igitur of the canon, the people in Rome were outraged, and they threatened to kill him because he had dared to touch liturgy. This, we're talking about the year 600. Already by then, the concept of the unchangeability of the Mass had been developed. Later on, after Gregory the Great, nobody dared to add anything to the canon of Mass. Nobody dared to change anything in the proper or the order of Mass, until Pius XII, who was not the great conservative as some people like to see him in their romantic thoughts, until Pius XII ignored this tradition and had Annibale Bonini, those of you who have heard about the Novus Ordo Mass and its creator have heard the name Bonini, and those of you who will read Father Trinchard's excellent book on the topic will hear about the Annibale Bonini. Annibale Bonini was discovered, promoted, and made by Pope Pius XII, and it is of no consequential interest to us if it was in reality a Secretary of State who did it or the Pope himself. The Pope is always responsible, no matter how. And that was the first change in liturgy. The rite of Palm Sunday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday was changed. Something that did not happen in the 1500 years before. Because when Pius V, with his everlasting document Quo Primum in 1570, canonized, that means set the rules forever, canonized the Mass that was nothing else but the Mass used by the Roman Curia and Rome, and the Diocese of Rome, he outlawed any further change, any future change. So I'll explain later why. So what Pius XII did was the beginning of the liturgical reform. The liturgical reform did not start with Paul VI of most infelicitous memory, but it started with Pius XII. Now, why is it that Mass must not change? That's very simple. The oldest liturgical rule in the Church is, in Latin, lex orandi, lex credendi. The law of what has to be believed results from the law of what has to be prayed. Now, when our Lord in the Sermon of the Mount said, I want you to say the Our Father, and then he said the Our Father to make us known to make it known to us what he wanted us to say, he established a rule of prayer. Now, this rule of prayer made the faith and not the other way around. We have to adjust our faith to what our Lord said in the Our Father, and not the other way around. We cannot take the Our Father and change it around to a new faith, or to a new adaptation of the faith to the 20th century. Therefore, the highest liturgical law says the liturgy is the basis of the faith. The liturgy, what the liturgy says, is what you believe. So if the liturgy changes, the faith changes.
That's the children's today.
Oh, good. So the faith never changes. We know that. Once the